The city never noticed her. In a place where luxury cars hummed through tree-lined avenues and glass towers kissed the sky, Ama moved like a shadow. Dressed in a faded blue uniform and worn-out sandals, she pushed her mop through marble floors that cost more than she earned in a year. To the Boadu family, owners of one of Ghana's largest real estate empires, she was the help. No one asked her name. No one wondered why she was always quiet, or why her eyes carried stories they'd never hear. But Ama didn't complain. She arrived before sunrise, cleaned with precision, and left long after everyone else. If she was lucky, the kitchen staff forgot to throw away untouched food, half a loaf of bread here, some rice and stew there. She wrapped it in plastic and slipped it into her bag, pretending it was for herself. It wasn't. One Thursday evening, Ama lingered near the back kitchen after her shift. A waiter had just dumped a tray of party leftovers into the trash. She hesitated. Her stomach growled. With a deep breath, she crouched, picked through the untouched food, and carefully packed it into a cloth-lined bowl. She didn't know she was being watched. High above, from the second-floor study, Mr. Kweku Boadu, the mansion's owner, leaned against the window. His sharp eyes had spotted movement below. At first, he assumed it was a raccoon. But when he looked closer, he saw her, the cleaner, bent over the bin, collecting scraps with a strange kind of grace, as if it were a sacred ritual. He frowned. He was used to beggars and thieves. But there was something different about her. Something gentle. Her expression wasn't desperate. It was calm. Kind. Even grateful. Who was she? He watched as Ama tucked the food into her old satchel, stood up, and wiped her hands on a handkerchief that looked like it had been stitched and restitched 100 times. She glanced around nervously, unaware that above her, the man who paid her salary stood frozen, suddenly unable to look away. Kweku closed the curtain. That night, he couldn't sleep. He poured himself a drink, but his thoughts kept drifting back to her, the woman who scrubbed his floors but carried herself like someone who had once worn pride like a crown. She had a story. He was sure of it. And soon, he would find out. The next few days passed with quiet routine, but Kweku was no longer the same. He found himself watching Ama more closely. She never spoke unless spoken to. She never lingered in the room she cleaned. And yet, there was an elegance to the way she moved, precise, unhurried, as though she had once lived in a world that respected her. Kweku asked the house manager, "How long has that cleaner worked here?" 3 months, sir. Came highly recommended. Keeps to herself. What's her full name? The manager paused. Just Ama, sir. No surname listed. No surname? That night, as the last of the household lights flickered off, Ama clocked out and stepped through the rear gates of the estate. Kweku stood in the shadows of his study, watching her go. Then, as if compelled by something he didn't fully understand, he threw on a plain hoodie, grabbed his keys, and followed her, on foot. Ama didn't take the main road. She moved quickly, winding through narrow alleys and side streets, slipping past beggars and barking dogs, as if she had every twist and turn memorized. Kweku kept a cautious distance. Something about the way she walked, not lost, not afraid, but almost deliberate, stirred an uneasy feeling in him. He expected her to head toward a slum, maybe a rundown hostel. Instead, she took a sharp turn onto a dusty hill path, and stopped in front of a crumbling church. The building was old, its stained glass windows cracked and patched with wood. But the lights inside were glowing softly. Laughter and voices echoed faintly from within. Kweku ducked behind a wall. Ama stepped through the door and was instantly mobbed by children. At least 20 of them. Boys and girls, barefoot and wide-eyed, their clothes mismatched and threadbare. They cheered when they saw her. One girl leapt into her arms. Another tugged at her skirt, holding a drawing. Ama smiled, wide, warm, and real, and began unpacking the food she had collected. Bread, stew, rice. She split it onto plates with practiced care. She knelt, wiped noses, kissed foreheads. She laughed and listened and sang songs in soft chi. It was a side of her Kweku had never imagined. This wasn't just charity. It was love. Intimate, aching, maternal love. He leaned back, shaken. Who was this woman? Why was she cleaning his mansion by day and feeding orphans by night? As he watched, one of the older boys brought Ama a broken sandal. She took out a needle and thread from her bag and began sewing it back together. She was more than a cleaner. More than a caretaker. She was their anchor. Kweku's throat tightened. Suddenly, Ama turned, sensing something. Her eyes scanned the shadows. Kweku ducked just in time. His heart pounded. When he peeked again, she had already returned inside. Back at the mansion, Kweku sat in the dark, replaying the scene in his mind. She had no family listed. No social media. No trace online. She begged for leftovers, and gave it all away. He poured himself another drink, then set it aside. He needed to know. Not out of suspicion anymore, but something deeper. Something tugging at his chest like a memory he'd forgotten how to feel. Tomorrow, he'd confront her. And if she didn't tell him the truth, he'd find it himself. The next morning, the mansion stirred with its usual rhythm, clinking silverware, polished shoes, and perfume trails. But something was different. Ama felt it. As she stepped into the hallway, mop and bucket in hand, she noticed the hush. The way the guards glanced at her. The way the house manager avoided her eyes. Then came the voice, deep, steady, and unmistakably commanding. Ama. A word. She froze. Mr. Kweku Boadu stood at the top of the staircase, dressed in a sharp navy suit. His tone was calm, but his gaze held something sharper than anger, curiosity. She followed him to the library, heart pounding. The door shut behind her. Kweku turned slowly. I followed you last night. Ama's blood drained from her face. I saw you at the church. With the children. He paused. Why didn't you tell anyone? Her fingers trembled around the hem of her apron. Because, no one ever asks. He waited. Ama looked away. Her voice cracked as she said, You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. A long silence. Then, like a dam breaking, she spoke. My name is not just Ama. I used to be Ama Serwa Ado. I was a nurse. A good one. I worked at St. Teresa's Hospital in Kumasi. I was engaged. He was a doctor, his name was Kojo. Her eyes lit up briefly. Then dimmed. We were going to start a clinic together. Help the poor. We had plans, too many plans. She looked up at Kweku. Her expression hardened. But one night, I stayed late. I was checking medicine inventories, and I saw something strange. A batch of sedatives that didn't match the records. I dug deeper. And I found it. Her voice dropped to a whisper. There was a trafficking ring. Right inside the hospital. They sedated runaway girls, undocumented migrants. Shipped them out. Harvested organs. Bodies disappeared. Kweku's mouth went dry. I reported it. To the board. To the police. I gave them names. Files. Pictures. She paused. 2 weeks later, Kojo was dead. They said it was a robbery. But it wasn't. They were sending a message. She wiped a tear, jaw clenched. I ran. Changed my name. Hid in Accra. I took cleaning jobs to survive. I found other victims. Children whose mothers were taken. I started feeding them. Teaching them. They needed me. Kweku was silent. Staring. Ama stepped back, afraid. You think I'm lying? I don't, he said slowly. Because I've heard whispers. That hospital's been under quiet investigation for years. He walked toward the window, hands on his hips. Then he turned. Why didn't you go public? They warned me. Sent letters. Pictures. I don't care what happens to me, but I couldn't risk the children. Ama looked down, her voice barely audible. You saw me begging for leftovers. That's all anyone sees, a poor cleaner. But that's fine. Because the moment they look away, I get to be someone else. For a long time, Kweku said nothing. Finally, he walked over to his bookshelf, pulled out a leather-bound album, and opened it. Inside was a photo of a girl. 17, smiling in a school uniform. My sister, he said quietly. She disappeared 10 years ago. No one ever found her. The last place she was seen alive was St. Teresa's Hospital. Ama's eyes locked onto the photo. And then her face changed. I know her, she whispered. Kweku's heart stopped. Ama stared at the picture. But, you're not going to like what I tell you next. Kweku felt the air leave the room. You know her? His voice trembled, a crack forming in the polished calm he wore like armor. Ama nodded slowly, her eyes still fixed on the photo. Her name was Abina, right? Kweku's knees nearly buckled. Yes. Ama's voice lowered, weighed down by memory. She wasn't dead. At least, not when I last saw her. It was 2 years ago. Ama had just moved to Accra, still reeling from the death threats and her fiancé's murder. She was working nights in a small private clinic, keeping her head down, when a woman stumbled in through the doors, dazed, bleeding, barefoot. She collapsed in Ama's arms, clutching a necklace, a broken locket with a photo inside. The same photo Kweku had just shown her. She had been missing for years, Ama said softly. Sold. Moved from country to country. Forced to do unspeakable things. But she escaped. Found her way back. Ama's hands shook at the memory. She didn't speak for days. Wouldn't even tell me her full name. But she showed me the locket. Said her brother used to call her Little Storm. Kweku swallowed hard. That was my nickname for her. Ama nodded. I hid her. Got her to safety. A friend of mine, a nun, arranged for her to be taken to a monastery in the eastern region. No IDs. No trail. Just peace. Why didn't she call me? He whispered, anger and sorrow swelling inside him. Ama's voice tightened. Because she was terrified. She believed your family had something to do with it. She believed your father was involved. Silence fell like a bomb. Kweku blinked. What? She didn't have proof, Ama said gently. Just memories. A voice on the phone. A man at the hospital. Money exchanged behind closed doors. She said your father was always close to the director, the one who ran the trafficking pipeline. Kweku turned away, eyes wild, denial raging inside him. My father is a businessman. Ruthless, yes, but not that. Ama's tone was soft, but firm. I understand. I didn't want to believe the people I trusted could be monsters either. Kweku sat down slowly, the weight of years crashing down on him. Things began to click. His father's strange trips. The hush money. The way the police stopped investigating Abina's case so quickly. How his father always told him, let the past stay buried. It had been buried all right, under pain, lies, and blood. Kweku looked up, something dangerous now stirring in his eyes. I want to find her. My sister. Ama hesitated. She won't trust you. Not yet. Then I'll earn it. A new silence bloomed between them, this time not from fear, but from purpose. Kweku stood. If my father's involved, if he's guilty. Ama met his eyes. Then you have a choice. Protect the legacy. Or destroy the monster behind it. Kweku clenched his jaw. He had spent his life living under his father's shadow. Now, that shadow might be soaked in blood. That night, Kweku drove to his father's private office, a steel and glass fortress in the heart of the city. He sat across from the old man, Kweku Boadu, the tycoon. Powerful. Cold. Kweku didn't ask gently. He laid down the locket. His father's eyes flicked to it, and for the first time in decades, wavered. A tiny crack in a marble face. You tell me, Kweku said. Where is my sister? What did you do? Kwabena leaned back, silent. Then, with chilling calm, he said, you shouldn't have dug, son. Some truths bury themselves for a reason. Kweku stared at his father, stunned by the coldness in his voice. You knew, he said slowly. All this time, you knew where she was. What happened to her? Kwabena Boadu didn't flinch. His face was carved from stone. I knew what had to be done. Kweku's voice rose. You let your own daughter disappear. You. I saved this family, Kwabena snapped. Your sister was reckless. She got in too deep. She disobeyed. She would have brought the entire business down. Business. That word struck Kweku like a slap. She was 16, he shouted. She trusted you. Kwabena stood, his shadow long and cold against the office lights. You think you understand how the world works, boy? You've lived in my empire, eaten from my table, worn my name like armor. But now you want to act like you're clean? I was clean, Kweku said, his voice cracking. Until now. Kwabena walked to the bar, poured himself a drink with infuriating calm. You think you're the first one to grow a conscience? I've buried better men than you for less. Kweku felt the room shift. It wasn't just disgust now, it was fear. And rage. Back at the church shelter, Ama was in the middle of tending to one of the children's wounds when her phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize. She answered cautiously. Ama, Kweku's voice came through, low and urgent. You were right. My father, he didn't just know. He orchestrated it. Ama closed her eyes, a deep sigh escaping her. I'm sorry. No. Don't be sorry, he said. Be ready. I'm not protecting him. I'm taking him down. The next day, Ama met Kweku in secret, inside a rented office above a printing shop, far from the prying eyes of his father's world. She brought a box with her, documents, flash drives, photos. All the evidence she had gathered over the years. Kweku brought something else. An internal financial report, signed off by his father, detailing shell companies tied to the very hospital where Abina and dozens of other girls were last seen. They stared at it in silence. It's enough, Ama whispered. It's finally enough. But Kweku wasn't satisfied. I want more than justice. I want the truth in the light. I want him to watch everything he built burn. Ama looked at him, hesitant. That's a dangerous road. I don't care, he said. He doesn't get to wear his power like a shield anymore. They contacted a journalist Ama trusted, an old friend who once exposed a corrupt police commissioner and lived to tell the tale. Together, they began crafting the story. Verified documents. Anonymous testimonies. A carefully timed exposé. But time was running out. Late one night, Kweku returned to his apartment and found the door slightly ajar. He stepped inside, and froze. His living room had been ransacked. Drawers pulled open. Papers scattered. His laptop smashed. Then he saw it, a note pinned to the wall with a knife. Blood is thicker than truth. Kweku's breath caught. His father knew. Meanwhile, Ama returned to the shelter to find two of the children missing. A neighbor had seen a black SUV parked near the church earlier. The driver didn't speak. The license plates were fake. Ama's heart sank. She had always feared this day. Now it had come. That night, Ama met Kweku one last time. We can't wait any longer, she said. He's not just cleaning up. He's retaliating. Kweku nodded, face tight. Then we go tomorrow. Public. Full story. We name him. Ama hesitated. What? Kweku asked. There's something you still don't know, she said slowly. Something I've kept from everyone. She pulled out an envelope from her coat pocket, and handed it to him. Inside was a photo, grainy, old, of a girl standing beside a man. It was Abina and Kweku Boadu. But not just any photo. They weren't father and daughter. They were strangers. I did more digging, Ama said. Abina isn't your biological sister. She was adopted. Kweku blinked, stunned. She wasn't your father's daughter. She was his victim. Chosen. Groomed. Controlled. The ground beneath Kweku's world cracked. All this time, the man he had defended, the man he had worshipped, feared, envied, wasn't just a monster. He was never a father. Not really. Just a master of lies. The sun rose over Accra, but it didn't bring peace, it brought a storm. By 9 a.m., news vans were already circling the Boadu estate. The exposé had dropped. Front page headlines. Viral hashtags. A family empire drenched in scandal. Trafficking ring exposed, billionaire Boadu linked to underground network. Victims speak, they took everything from us. Daughter or prisoner? The girl behind the gate. The article included interviews with rescued victims, anonymous whistleblowers, and forensic evidence tracing money directly from Kwabina's companies to the shadow hospitals and safe houses abroad. Ama's voice was there too, raw and anonymous. We were invisible. But we never stopped watching. And we never stopped fighting. The image of Kweku standing beside the survivors, his jaw tight, his father's signature in his hands, flooded every screen. People who had once admired the Boadus for their wealth now demanded justice with venom. The country held its breath. At the Boadu estate, chaos reigned. Police stormed the mansion. Kweku Boadu was arrested, handcuffed before the portraits of his ancestors. The empire he built on fear began to crumble. As cameras flashed and sirens screamed, he turned once to look at Kweku, the son he once groomed to take his place. I built this world for you, he hissed. Kweku stared back, his voice ice. You built it over graves. Meanwhile, in the eastern region, Ama arrived at a quiet monastery nestled among hills and silence. She walked slowly through the gardens, her breath shaking. And then she saw her, Abina. She was thinner, older. But her eyes, those fierce, stormy eyes, were the same. Ama didn't speak. She just knelt, and held out the locket. Abina's breath hitched. She took it in trembling hands, opened it, and saw the photo. And then behind her, a voice. Abina? She turned. Kweku stood there. Older. Wounded. Different. For a second, she looked ready to run. But then Kweku dropped to his knees, tears already falling. I didn't know. I didn't protect you. I'm so sorry. She stared at him. And for the first time in 10 years, she wept. 1 year later. The shelter was no longer a crumbling church, it was a community center. New roof. Solar panels. Classrooms. Ama stood at the front, reading to children who now wore uniforms with pride. Their bellies were full. Their laughter, real. Kweku had used what remained of his father's wealth, not to rebuild the Boadu Empire, but to rebuild lives. He had cut every tie, testified in court, and walked away from power. But he returned, every week, to see Ama and Abina, now working together to help others like them. They weren't victims anymore. They were warriors. One afternoon, a young girl approached Ama after class. Madam Ama, she whispered, how did you do it? How did you survive? Ama smiled, soft, tired, but full of light. I let them see me as just a poor cleaner, she said. But I always knew who I was. She turned to the camera, to you, and said, don't underestimate quiet people. We carry whole worlds behind our silence. She was never just a cleaner. She was a survivor. A protector. And the key to unmasking a monster. It's not where you start, it's what you choose to stand for that defines you.